afternoon, everyone. This is going to be a tough one. This is an emotional family. It is an emotional day. And I am honored to be here to help you say farewell to your dear husband, father, your son, son-in-law, brother, brother-in-law, nephew, cousin, uncle, and friend. From Jean's obituary. It is with heavy hearts and tremendous sadness that we announce the passing of our beloved Jean Parsons, Bernard Eugene, of Grande Prairie, Alberta, formerly of Labrador City, Newfoundland. Jean passed away suddenly at his home in Grande Prairie on February 23rd, 2023, at the age of 50 years old. Jean was born in Labrador City, Newfoundland on June 22nd, 1972, to Bernard and Joan Parsons. He was their only child until he happily welcomed his sister Cindy in February 1982. He grew up in Lab City, where he was involved with the minor hockey program. He started out playing house league hockey and then graduated to all-star hockey teams that traveled all over the province of Newfoundland and into Quebec for tournaments. Hockey was his lifelong passion, and he was a proud goaltender through and through. One of Jean's best hockey memories was when his team won the Newfoundland Provincial Championship in 1988. After graduating from high school, Jean moved to Halifax, Nova Scotia, where he worked as an audio engineer for several years. He then decided to move to Grande Prairie, to be closer to family and to pursue different opportunities. Once in Grande Prairie, Jean was accepted into an apprenticeship program and graduated as a Red Seal certified machinist. He enjoyed professional success and was well regarded in his field. In 1996, Jean married his high school love, Paula Hounsell. Together, Jean and Paula had 3 beautiful children, Zachary, Noah, and Rachel. Jean and Paula's marriage ended in 2013, but they remained close as they continued to co-parent their 3 children. In 2017, Jean married his best friend, Wendy Fraser, and gained a stepdaughter, Sarah. Jean's heart was so huge and loving, and he always made it known that he loved Sarah as one of his own. Jean was an honest, hardworking man, passionate about his family, his friends, hockey, and music. He was a bottomless source of musical information and absolutely loved to pound on his drum kit at every opportunity. Those who knew him will always remember his amazing sense of humor and the way he could keep everybody entertained when he was in the room. Anywhere was a brighter place when Jean was there. That last line, anywhere was a brighter place when Jean was there, reminded me of a favorite reading of what a successful man is. The author is unknown. That man is a success who has lived well, laughed often, and loved much, who has gained the respect of intelligent men and the love of his children, who has filled his niche and accomplished his task, who leaves the world better than he found it, who has never lacked appreciation of earth's beauty or failed to express it, and who looked for the best in others and gave the best he had. Well, Jean certainly did give the best he had, and that's evidenced by so many people here today and those who are watching us from Newfoundland as well. And over the past week, I've heard many stories that show how Jean lived according to that description of a successful man. In a few minutes, there will be time for you to come up and share your fond memories, and I'm warning you now so that you have time to gather your thoughts and screw up your courage to come to the podium and share a story. But first, I'd like to invite Jean's cousin, Denise, to share the eulogy. And I'd like to note, she told me that I couldn't cry because then she would. I think she was crying first back there, so in my defense. I have my Kleenex. I'm Denise Parsons. I'm Jean's cousin and the niece of Uncle Bern and Aunt Joan and cousin to Cindy. I'm so grateful to be here today to share some aspects of Jean's life. It's 10 pages long. It's probably a drop in the bucket, and I'm thrilled that so many people were able to help and contribute. Zach, Noah, Rachel, thank you so much, and all the others who shared their stories so that we could send Jean off with great memories and good laughs. So here we go. My earliest memories of Jean are captured in vintage 1970s photos. The little kid who was so damn cute, the same age as my sister, but decidedly not my sister. I think I followed him around our house in Edmonton to the point of annoyance, and I doted on him like the deserving sweet boy that he was. I have no recollection of what we did or what we talked about, but I remember joy, a full heart. Uncle Bern, Aunt Joan, and my cousin Eugene is happiness. That happiness continued during our multi-family camping trip to Montana, booting around in our brown Ford truck with a super cab and makeshift bed that doubled as a Barbie playground. Jean was not impressed. Well, there were endless adventures as Jean, Claudine, and I moved back and forth through that little window that separated the truck from the super cab. The adventures really began the moment we stopped for the night. Rock jumping across streams, tree climbing, hill scrambling. We were perpetually filthy, I'm sure. Probably drove Aunt Joan nuts. I remember a particularly bad fall roll and a crash down a hillside through a bunch of pine trees and a lot of bawling on my part. And my mom patched me up, and I remember the hovering presence of Eugene. He was so concerned. I could almost feel his ache. It's odd to look back and realize how foreshadowing that moment was. Jean had so much empathy and kindness from an early age. That experience was an insight into the man he would become, the kind and generous man whose presence lingers now. Jean and Cindy grew up in Labrador with cousins Michelle, who's here today and shared some lovely stories. Grew up with Michelle, Debbie, Dean, and Jason. Michelle used to babysit Jean. She says he was the easiest kid to take care of. He was easy to entertain. He loved to play games and always listened when it was time to go to bed. Now, Aunt Joan and Uncle Bern, is that true? Uncle Bern and Uncle Ford had a cabin at Lake Shabugamu. There were many adventures down at the lake, playing on the rocky beaches, enjoying campfires, fishing from the dock, and climbing on the bunk beds in a rustic cabin with no electricity and no running water. Those were simple times that created lifelong memories. Christmas was a special time in Labrador. There were years when the family gatherings included 15 to 20 people for Christmas dinner. There was lots of good food, laughter, and robust debate. It was also an occasion to get dressed up, a memory that Michelle said still makes her smile. It was the year Jason and Dean and Jean were embracing the Miami Vice vibe. They proudly sported stylish mullets and wore pastel-colored sweaters. Flashback to the 80s. Uncle Bern and Aunt Joan remember those Christmas gatherings with great joy. Even after Jean had left home, he came back to be with family. All the cousins and aunts and uncles would share stories about where they'd gone and what they'd been up to. They'd take trips down to the lake and to the cabin. It was some of the best times, some of the most joyful times of their lives.
Those joy-filled gatherings in his youth extended to his love of being together with friends and family once he moved to Grand Prairie. He often showed his love by teasing you. Where's Aunt Dale? Aunt Dale remembers that he was always acting her out for buzzing around with her handheld vacuum after the kids got home from school and there was a mess to clean up. He'd follow her around saying, vroom, vroom, until she got the giggles. And she's giggling now. And he always busted a gut watching Aunt Dale's attempts to get Michael to go to school. You couldn't know Gene without knowing about his love of hockey. Yeah. His memories of his life as a goalie were tied to his identity. And for Uncle Bern too. He loved being a hockey dad, the early mornings at the rink, and a chin wag with all the other hockey parents. It wasn't just hockey, though. 2 summers ago, we were here in town for our son's baseball tournament, and Gene came out to watch a game. We were talking, enjoying the game, and when you know it, Gene had baseball stories. He had played. It cracked me up so much because it was so Gene. Oh yeah, that. I know a bit about that too. He never stopped. He always found ways to connect, to relate, and if he could do it through sports, that was so awesome. And Dale remembers Gene inviting Michael out to play hockey in a fun league. Turned out it wasn't so fun for the opposing teams. Gene's goalie skills and Michael's scoring skills meant they won a lot. Now I think there are some teammates in the crowd today. We might have to fact check that with you. Handball, soccer, and if we call dance and drama a sport, were also in Gene's repertoire. Zach, Noah, and Rachel have so many memories of encouragement and support that Gene gave them. One year when Zach was in ball hockey and one of the coaches didn't show up, everyone was in a frenzy calling out for volunteer coaches, anyone with experience. Well, someone pointed out, it might have been Cindy, that Gene had some experience, and that was the beginning of a long coaching gig. Gene ran the defense and goalie coaching for over 5 years. And though Zach remembers they were a horrible losing team, he mostly remembers how his dad would get right into it and how contagious his enthusiasm was. I think we can all relate to that. Noah remembers his soccer games and his dad's unending support. One time, at a house league game, it was just a house league game, Noah shot and scored a goal. Gene was so proud. He was yelling and cheering, screaming over everybody. And it was like there wasn't another soul in sight. Gene was a fierce supporter of Rachel's dance and drama pursuits and was often carrying her pink bag of outfits from class for her. One time, passing past a group of boys who thought it was pretty funny to see Gene carrying this bag, he stopped and said, "What? Pink looks good on me," and carried on. The kids loved that story. It's so Gene just to say it. He was their greatest cheerleader and their loudest fan. He made sure that Zach, Noah, and Rachel knew that his screeching and yelling was all for them. Gene's passion for hockey extended to his stepdaughter, Sarah. Hockey was something that really created a strong bond between Sarah and Gene. She was a hockey player, and he loved to come to all her games and cheer her on. Wendy shared that at home Gene would give her pointers, and they would watch hockey games together regularly. Sarah loved it when Gene would play goalie for the parents versus kid games with her team, and she scored on him. While Gene's kindness and passion for hockey were defining, there's one characteristic that every single person who knew him will mention at least once. Y'all know what it is. Humor. Gene was always the funniest guy in the room. Not a bit funny, not funny sometimes, always the funniest guy in the room. I learned more Newfie slang from him, and I was raised by a Newfie, but I still learned it all from Gene. A standout evening that showcased Jean's talent for entertaining was my dad's surprise retirement party. Y'all remember that? We had planned an elaborate ruse, and to pull it off, we needed a decoy. Jean was the decoy. He kept my dad so distracted with his one-man comedy show and everyone else that we were almost late for the main event. His accent, his animation, did you ever see him sit still when he was telling a story? It absolutely blew my mind. I had no idea he could transform into this mesmerizing character that had everyone in stitches for hours. It was the perfect way to start a very special evening for our family and brought my dad so much joy. It was like we were down at Lumsden North. Where it all began for my dad is what Jean recreated in that living room. Sometimes being the life of the party meant being on the receiving end of other people's fun. Our cousins Kathy, Lisa, and Mike were over for a visit when Jean was also visiting Edmonton as a young boy. My sister and I, and Kathy and Lisa, I know you're watching now, would come up with elaborate dance routines to the tunes of Alvin and the Chipmunks. I was gonna sing, but I won't. These elaborate dance routines to songs by chipmunks required dance partners. Well, you can guess where this is going. Lisa and Kathy didn't want to dance with their brother. I think my sister and I got Mike, and so poor Jean. He was put through the paces with two steps and polka moves the entire night. As Lisa said, bless his soul, he didn't even complain. I think he loved it. When you're as experienced as Jean was at being the life of the party, it translates into being a hilarious dad. My sister and I remember visiting Jean, Paula, and the kids in their new house. It was before the landscaping was done, and to keep the kids entertained, Jean had pulled the trampoline right up to the patio door. That might not sound astounding, but it was. It was right at the patio door. All you had to do was open the door, take a step, and boom, you were on a trampoline. Every kid's dream. Claudine and I forever think of Jean as the quintessential fun dad. Zach, Noah, and Rachel knew how to mess with fun dad. It often went like this. Mom, can I have $1 to buy a slushie? No. Dad, can I have $1 to buy a slushie? Hell yeah! And here's $4. Buy everyone a slushie and bring me back a Hershey's cookies and cream bar. Wendy and Sarah have memories of Jean as fun dad too. One time they were all walking from the parking lot into the house, and Sarah and Wendy tried to sneak up on Jean and push him into the snow. He fended them off and threw them both in the snow. When they kept trying to push Jean into the snow, he just kept swatting at them like they were flies. Sarah thought this was all very hilarious. Noah shared a recent fun dad moment. Jean had come over for a visit and brought his NHL crib board for an evening of cards. Feeling like crib was very fancy and bourgeoisie or bougie, as Noah tells me, and Noah brought out the solid gold deck of cards. They couldn't shuffle the cards. Their bougie game of crib with bougie gold cards was kind of a disaster, but still so much fun. That was about a week before Jean passed, and when he left Noah's place, he left his crib board. He said it was Noah's to keep now. Music. I think being the life of this party, especially when most parties include music, meant he also had to love music. He loved listening to it, especially his vinyl collection. He loved live concerts, and he loved sharing the music he loved. And most importantly, he loved to play those drums. Jean's Aunt Dale remembers their good times playing music, or pretending to Matthew's band equipment, which provided the perfect prop for the cousins, aunts, uncles, all to make a makeshift band performance and have a great dance party. There are some pretty fantastic moments from our 2004 Parsons family reunion. One that stands out for my sister and me was kneading down at Cyril's cabin in Lumsden North. My husband, who is also a Gene, was playing the guitar and quietly singing a tune. And our Gene couldn't contain his excitement. He knew some of the words, and he knew the beat. And his foot knew the beat. And the floor learned the beat. And before long, Gene was a one-man percussion show, stomping and shaking and taking Steve Earle to a whole new level. If it was going to be a party, it was going to be a loud one. Rachel's bond. I missed a point, sorry. Everyone knows that Gene loved obscure music. So could he handle country music? Wendy really wanted to see Garth Brooks, and so he indulged her with concert tickets. After a fantastic show, he admitted Garth was awesome. I think Alvin and the Chipmunks laid the foundation for that. Rachel's bond with her dad was so much about music. She remembers the 5-hour drives from Rocky Mountain House to Grand Prairie with her dad. He would give her full control of the stereo. She'd play her music, and he'd be curious and interested, and eventually there'd be a song that Gene really liked. It was her victory. It was her victory to bring her dad around to some of her music. She even managed to get him to wear matching Def Leppard t-shirts. You saw one out there. He pretended it wasn't cool, but Noah pointed out that that face totally revealed that he was loving it. Gene heavily influenced Rachel's music taste, and he influenced her love of vinyl. He had a huge vinyl collection. A bittersweet memory now. Rachel was blown away by Gene's Best of Prism album and begged him to let her borrow it. He refused. She begged. He said, "You can have this album now, but one day you get them all." Gene loved any gathering where he could bask in the company of friends and family. And if music was a necessary pairing, there was one other thing that completed this trifecta of happiness: food. He loved to cook, and he loved to eat, except seafood. I teased him endlessly about this, like, what kind of newfie doesn't eat seafood? He made up for that with his love of jam jams. However, he insisted that he didn't eat seafood. This sparked a memory for Rachel. Grandfather had made a feast of crab, and what did Gene eat? A leftover pork chop. All that being said, I heard from Wendy that every seafood dish he tried he loved, except steamed crab and lobster and cod au gratin. It was a complex relationship, this tolerate to stain seafood problem. For some time, Gene lived with my dad when he was attending NAIT in Edmonton. My dad's girlfriend at the time, Ludi, loved to cook for Gene. His favorite meal was a rabbit dish she made. The banter would go something like this: "Eugenio, how was your supper?" And in response, "Ludivina, you are awesome." The drawn-out praise of a man with a content belly. I suspect that rabbit had a good sauce, because Gene was also known as the gravy-loving son-in-law. This was echoed by Rachel highlighting that every Jig's dinner he had was drowning in gravy. I can hear him now. "My Jesus, that's some good." Sarah absolutely loved it when Gene would make chicken wings. She could not get enough of them. Gene loved to tell the story of the time that Sarah grabbed the last chicken wing, started eating it, and then asked, "Can I have the last one?" So many of Zach, Noah's, and Rachel's memories of their dad center around food. Gene and Zach had a whole summer watching the show Step Brothers, and they coined it the summer of midnight lunches. Poutine, sloppy joes, pasta, pizza, and burgers, all homemade, were in rotation. See? Fun dad. Nobody could grill like Gene. Noah remembers how proud his dad was when Noah grilled the perfect steak. Jean intensely stating, "You nailed it. You are my son." While Jean had his tried and true recipes, all the kids talked about how open he was to trying new ideas. He was always prepared to give something a shot, and if it worked out, it was a huge score. And if it didn't, well, that was on you. In the week before Jean passed away, Zach and his dad created a few more food-themed memories. On Zach's insistence, they decided to alter the pizza recipe and oil the pan instead of butter it. This was a big break from tradition, as Jean had been buttering the pan for 20 years. Well, Zach for the win. Jean inspected the cooked crust and declared it the best bottom he'd ever seen. That pizza-making adventure just a few weeks ago is also a bittersweet memory now. The go-forward plan was to always oil the crust and to buy some cooling racks to keep it crusty. Zach, I'm going to have a heck of a time pulling this one off, so here we go. 3 days before Jean passed, Zach and his dad made a big pot of chili. They used a recipe from an Australian guy they discovered during the pandemic. They liked this guy because he was just a regular guy who, while he was cooking, swears a lot, which I think maybe Jean and Zach did too. Anyway, it went something like this. Chili con carne. You want to say it? Chili can't go outside for dinner. So let's chili con cook it at home. Jean and Zach found this hilarious, and when Zach told me the story, I was feeling myself laughing too, but it takes the son of Jean to be able to pull it off. Rachel remembers the summer when she was taking a cooking class for school, a summer of cooking with her dad. They made so many things, including the secret Parsons spaghetti sauce recipe. There's much discussion amongst the kids about this sauce. They're not convinced it's that secret. They figure Grandma ripped it out of a magazine. Nonetheless, it was a coveted recipe, and finally, back in 2021, Jean shared it with his kids, on the condition that they swore to never share it with their friends. And with that, the secret Parsons spaghetti sauce recipe was passed down to the next generation. Jean and Wendy also loved to cook together. It was some of their happiest times. And for Sarah too. When Sarah was in grade 2, Jean would pick her up from school on Friday half-days, and they would make a stop at Mary Brown's for some chicken and taters. They would bring it home, have their feast, and then snuggle up on the couch for a movie afternoon while everyone else was stuck at work and school. A love of food and cooking was a tenet of Jean and Cindy's relationship too. Hell's Kitchen was their first cooking show love, and eventually Chef Ramsay joined the scene, and he was the source of their entertainment. Jean's love of cooking rubbed off on Cindy, and here we are today with so many gourmet chefs in one family. Jean was an awesome brother. So proud from day one to have a baby sister. A memory that stands out for Uncle Bern, Aunt Joan, and Cindy is that of the pamper box. Jean used his crafting skills to turn a diaper box into a vehicle of sorts. He towed Cindy around in the diaper box for hours, and she loved it. Taking it to the next level, as only Jean could, for Christmas he decorated the box. He took it downstairs, pulled out the tinsel and decorations, and spruced it right up. It was such a reflection of how much Jean cared for Cindy. After Jean had left home, Cindy would be beside herself, waiting for Jean's return from Ontario for school breaks. And he would indulge her. "Come on, Cindy, let's go to the mall." She was so thrilled that her big brother would drive her uptown. He was Cindy's protector when they were growing up, and he made sure she was safe. Cindy has many fun memories of her time with Jean. Here's an example of one. Jean was babysitting, and he and Cindy were having a grand time hanging out in the basement and watching movies. They were interrupted by a knock at the door. Someone was looking for Bernie Parsons. This guy had a great big burlap sack to drop off. Jean and Cindy grabbed it, tossed it on the floor, and resumed their movie watching. Later on, Cindy went upstairs to grab a pop and discovered the bag was moving. Well, she ran right back downstairs yelling, "Jean, the bag is moving!" Jean tried to brush her off, but he wouldn't have it. She wouldn't have it. And sure enough, Jean agreed, the bag is moving. And here comes a classic Jean move. The discussion went something like this. Jean, having found a bat, "Okay, Cindy, here's a bat. I'm going to open up the bag, and you stand right there and hold the bat. And when I open the bag, you swing the bat." Remember, they're 10 years apart. Jean's about 18. And Cindy replies, "I might be 8, but I'm not stupid." "You hold the bat. I'll open the bag." After a few rounds, Jean finally agreed that Cindy could open the bag and he'd hold the bat. So this is Jean. "Okay, on the count of 3, rip open the bag. 1, 2, 3, open." Everyone's in position. The bag is opened, and it was live lobster. No bats were swung, no children were harmed, and a story for the ages was made. Who knew Jean had a fear of spiders? He did, and so does Cindy. Well, one time Cindy called upon Jean to kill a spider. Did Jean grab a tissue and give it a pinch, or shoo it outside? No. Jean got a hammer. Jean got a hammer, and he killed that spider good. The source of his fear splattered all over the ceiling. It's funny how even though they were 10 years apart, they were so close. Some people say twins have their own language. Well, Cindy and Jean had their own language. Song lyrics and movie quotes were the foundation of their secret code. Only they knew what they were talking about. Jean was so proud of what Cindy accomplished in her life. I think he could recite her graduation dates and education and career accomplishments better than she could. When Cindy graduated, she moved to Grand Prairie. The draw of a loving brother and a secret language pulled her from one side of the country to the other. I read a tribute from a friend of Jean. It said, "If love could have kept him alive, he would be alive right now." He was loved as a cousin, a coach, a teammate, a nephew, a friend, a brother, a son, a grandson, a dad, a stepdad, a husband, and a friend to so many. He was so easy to love. As Rachel and Noah and Zach said, their favorite part of their dad was that they could just be who they were. He got the unfiltered version of them, and he loved it, and they loved him for it. And still, he's having the last laugh. Zach and Noah are slightly annoyed that Jean did not pass down his gene for a good beard. He took that gene with him. It's ended the line. The boys figure it's his last joke. No beards for you, boys. The last time we spoke, he said, "You and Claudine are like sisters to me." I think he might have said that to a few more people in his life, and it was such a reflection of his generous heart. He was so kind to say that, and yet he and I both knew that no one compares to Cindy, the most loyal and loving sister to Jean. Uncle Bern reminded me that Jean would be saying this to us now. "Now, boys, don't be sitting around snotting and bawling. Let's look at the bright side." It's hard to see a bright side, but one thing that is apparent is that Jean created a legacy, a treasure chest of memories and hockey pucks that we can all borrow from and a legacy that lives in the humor, kindness, and cheekiness of Noah, Zach, Rachel, and Sarah, who he loved as a daughter. A legacy and torch that Aunt Joan, Uncle Bern, and Cindy will carry for all the years to come. Jean, we miss you already.
Thank you, Denise. As I said a few minutes ago, we'll have a moment for an open mic here. But there's a couple of other tributes, and I know there are some family members that would like to say a couple of words. I'm going to invite Wendy up to speak from her heart, and in a moment I'll invite others up as well.
I'm going to try and get through this. I'm Wendy, and I'm Jean's wife. And Denise, that was beautiful. Thank you. I need you. I just want to begin by thanking everybody for being here today with us to remember and honor and celebrate Jean. When I sat down to think about what I would say today, I wasn't certain if I would be able to come up here and speak. How does somebody keep it together when their heart is broken? When the love of their life is gone and they have to say goodbye? But I thought about Jean, and I knew that he would give me the strength that I needed to say what I wanted to say today. That was Jean. He was always there to help those who loved him and that he loved. If you were in Jean's circle, he always had you. You always knew that you could count on him, no matter what. So today I'm going to get my strength from Jean. When Jean and I met in April of 2013, I knew right away how special he was. He was kind, funny, smart, and thoughtful. And almost immediately he felt like home, like a safe place. I also knew really early on that Jean was someone who would love me and Sarah fiercely, and who would fit right into our crazy family. And he did. He was one of us, and we all loved him so much. It's impossible to believe that we had fewer than 10 years together, and that he's really gone. It's hard to imagine how we will be able to do this life without him, without a very large part of our once full hearts. Jean, my love, I know that you're looking down and loving us all from where you are now, and I hope that you're at peace. And I hope you know how much you were loved by so many people. Our lives are better for having had you in them, and I am forever changed because of your love, and I will love you forever.
I'd like to just read a couple of tributes that have come in. The first one from Nan West, who is with us from Newfoundland today, and she is Jean's grandmother. As my first grandchild, I treasured Jean so much from the first time he came to visit in Lumsden. He was such a sweet boy, and I loved watching him grow into a fine young man. He would continue to visit often, and I so enjoyed when he started having his own kids and would visit with them. At these times, I could see what a great father he had become, and I had so much pride for my oldest grandchild. I'm so glad that he got to visit me when he was back home in Newfoundland this winter. He is going to be so very missed, and I will carry him in my heart forever. Uncle Fred sends his deepest condolences as well. And from Aunt Tennis, that's Aunt Glenda, and Uncle Dwayne. Wish we could be all there with you all in person. However, we are watching the service by webcast with Jean's grandmother, Emma, from her room at the seniors' home in Gander. Jean, being my first nephew, holds a very special place in my heart. I have so many treasures of when he was just a little boy. One memory in particular of Jean is when he was around 3 or 4 years old, outside on a wet, misty day, playing in a pile of dirt. He eventually came to the door, and all I could see was white teeth and eyes. I got a cloth, washed his face, and he looked up at me and said, "Thank you, sweetheart." That was Jean. Always had a joke or a funny story to make you laugh. We are so happy we got to spend time with him in December and January when he was visiting St. John, his mom and dad in St. John's, and celebrated Christmas and New Year's with us. In our hearts, you'll live forever because we thought the world of you. Fly with the angels, my darling Jean, until we meet again. From Aunt Tennis and Uncle Dwayne. One more from Uncle Claude. So sorry that I'm unable to be with you all for the celebration of Jean's life. Though I am not there in person to share the memories that I have of Jean, there is no doubt that he left a mark in a very positive way in the hearts of us who knew him. The happy memories will bring us all peace and comfort. Bern, Joan, and Cindy, let's go back to the last time we were together and hold that memory forever. Jean and my son, I'm having an extra serving of rabbit for you today. Sleep easy, Eugenio. Love from Uncle Claude. If any of you would like to come and share a short memory or some words of comfort, now would be the time. Please feel free to come forward.
I'm Paula. I'm Jean's first wife and mother to our beautiful children. Couldn't let him go without saying something to him. He would be so disappointed if I did. Oh, Jean and I had 24 years together in total. Even after we divorced, we did our best to put our children first. It wasn't always easy because we know how to push each other's buttons. We had that perfected. The past year, Jean and I got back to a really good friendship. We talked a lot. I spoke to him that day, the day before. We were on the phone over an hour just talking like old friends. I'll be grateful for that conversation, as his last words to me were, "Paula, are you happy?" And I said, "Yes, Jean, I'm very happy." He said, "Good." Oh. I'll be grateful for the gift I'll always have as our 3 children together. And I promise, Jean, our grandkids will know about you. You will not be forgotten. My father died at the same age, and Jean was there. He was a strength for me when I lost my dad. Sorry. His memory will be brought on to our grandkids, as I know they're going to lose out on a wonderful grandfather. And as what was said, Jean was the fun dad. So you know what that made me. that made me the mean mom because I had to be the disciplinarian. One of my funniest memories will be I worked night shift. So the kids knew when mom said no, it was no. So they would always try to sneak behind my back and go to their dad because dad was always, oh, sure. And then I'm like, I said no. Oh, your mother said no. I was asleep. It was a Saturday. I had to work again that night. And I can hear the kids, because of course, if Jean tried to say no, they got on him and bugged until he would finally give in because he couldn't take it anymore. So I can hear them down there. They're at the dining room table, so when you came down our stairs, the dining room table was right there. Jean's back was to the stairs. I could hear them. I woke up, and he's trying to tell them no, and they would not give up. I come down over the stairs without a peep. Of course, Jean couldn't see me. I stand there without a word. The three kids' face, they looked, they shut up, and all Jean said was, huh, you woke your mother up, didn't you? I turned around and went back up over the stairs, and it was quiet for the rest of the day. That is one of my best memories. My sister Karen and I and her husband Dirk and Zach, we were talking last night, and this story got brought up, which I totally forgot about. Our first home we rented was a duplex, and it was like a bunch of duplexes on the street. We partied a lot. We had a lot of house parties. That, of course, early 20s, no kids. We had great weekends. So we were there in the house. It was a Saturday morning, and we hear the duplex next to us. They did not get along, the two families. And I think the one side broke into the other one, went over the balcony, stole a bunch of stuff and come out. Well, we hear the racket, we look out. Well, there they are out on the lawn, axes swinging. It was terrible. The cops show up. The cops are there telling us, everyone to stay in their houses. Well, we're, of course, nosy, looking out the back balcony, and all of a sudden, Gene, still the same stereo he has, blasts, opens the windows as loud as he could, plays, bad boys, what you gonna do? Yeah, so there we are. We're turning around. Karen goes, Gene, turn that off, and he's laughing to kill himself. So, yeah, that was Gene, the life of the party. He will be missed. And as I told him that day, that last day that I spoke to him, I got to tell him, and it's true. I told him, Gene, you will always have a piece of my heart. I did it. We did tell each other we'll always have a love for each other, and we always did, and we always will. Even though we were divorced, that didn't change. That there was a love there, and he will truly always have a piece of my heart, as I'm sure he will, many in this room that got the honor of having him in their life. Thanks.
Okay. I'm a little nervous, so I'm sorry. Some of the things that I'll never forget that I had with my dad was, well, first of all, we had a secret handshake. So every time I got to see him, we would whip out our secret handshake, and it was all good. And one thing that I'm always going to miss hearing, whenever he called me and I'd pick up the phone, he'd say, "Daughter, it's your father." Some of my favorite memories were, I used to ask him, I'd say, "Can we go cruising, please?" And he'd say, "Okay, fine, let's go." And he'd hop in the van. Of course, he'd let me DJ, play any music I wanted. And we'd go and get slushies, and then we'd just drive around and listen to music for hours. And it was just one of the things that we always bonded on. And another thing with having to do with his food obsession, there was one time we were driving, he came all the way down to Rocky to get me, and we were driving back up to GP. And on the highway right outside of Whitecourt there was a storm and there was a crash, so we got stuck there for the night, and we had to stay in a motel there. And we had gone out somewhere and got a whole bunch of like chicken wings and fries. And we'd eaten so much to the point where I was like, oh man, I can't eat anymore. My stomach's hurting, man. And he's like, all right, fine, we'll pack it up, we'll put it in the fridge there, because he had like a little mini fridge. And then he'd gone to the bathroom for like 15 minutes, and I was like, well, my stomach's still kind of hurting, but those wings were really good. So I pulled them out again, and I'm sitting on the bed, I'm eating them, and he's like, Lord Jesus, you eating them again? Jesus Christ, boy, what you think? You just complained about your stomach hurting, now you're eating them again. I'm just like, yeah, well, get it from you, Dad. But another thing, when you mentioned, Mom mentioned the bad boy story, that's one thing I didn't realize I inherited from my dad, because when I drive around with my friends, whenever we see someone, cop pulled someone over on the road, I'll be like, slow down, let me blast it. Turn down the music. Bad boys, bad boys. That's one thing I fully did not realize I inherited from him was messing with people, basically. But my father gave me my love for music and probably gravy as well. He just was always the kind of person that you knew you could tell him anything and he wouldn't judge you. He'd tell you what he thought, but he'd never be judgmental, and he was always so open and kind-hearted to anyone. I remember I used to tell him he had the white dad smile, because he'd always do whenever, greeting someone, he'd do the I don't know, I'll forever be thankful for the person that he helped me become. My biggest supporter through my struggle with graduating high school, he helped me through just by talking to me and being there. I always knew he believed in me. That's one thing I'll never forget, is I knew how much he believed in me and how much, no matter what happened, he'd be there. And he just was an amazing person, and I think that really shows with the amount of people that are in this room and the amount of people that couldn't be here. It just really goes to show how many lives he truly did touch and how much he really did mean to so many people. And I think for nearly all of us in this room, we can say we will always love him and never let the memory of him fade away.
That was really nice, Rachel. My name is Michelle. Wendy is my sister, and Jean was my brother-in-law. So thank you, everybody, for being here. And obviously, we all really loved him a lot. So truly, from the very first day that I met Jean, I just knew what a genuinely kind person that he was. He always had a way of making everyone around him feel loved. His heart was huge. And if you were lucky enough to be someone that he cared about, he always made sure that you knew it. Our family was so happy that Wendy had found her person and that Sarah found such a good role model in Jean. He fit so perfectly into our fold. We all loved him, and we will all miss his wonderful laugh, giant hugs, and his amazing sense of humor. My personal favorite memory of Jean is finding the note that he had written for me. He had set up the guest room for me and left the note on the bed. Jean and I would always say to one another, punch you right into throat, with a heavy emphasis on the pronunciation of throat, because it took me a long time. I'm not newbie. The note read, for my beautiful and lovely sister-in-law. You have a home here anytime you need it. Relax and enjoy. But in true Gene form, he couldn't just leave it at that. He added, yours truly, Gene, punch you in the throat. Trout Parsons. And because he had placed a chocolate on the note, he added, P.S., for your snacking enjoyment. And to me, it is that note that truly epitomizes Gene's character. He took care of those that he loved with humor, kindness, and his signature bit of sass. We will all miss you, my dear brother-in-law, until we meet again.
I had to write notes on my phone. I met Jean and Paula in 1998 living in Claremont. As a paper girl, I needed new clients to sell more paper subscriptions, so I went right next door and gave a knock. I was immediately met with two smiling faces, and I did my best paper girl spiel, but then I was immediately questioned. How old are you? Where do you live? And are you busy tonight? That night, I babysat for the first time. Zach was 6 months old, and I will never forget when I showed back up that evening, I quickly got the rundown and away they went. Before they left, Jean said to me, there's a Pepsi in the fridge and a bag of Ruffles loaded baked potato chips on the counter. It was the first of many babysitting gigs I had at the Parsons house, and I can guarantee there was always a bag of Ruffles loaded potato chips and a Pepsi every time. I remember a frantic call from Jean for someone to watch the boys when I believe Paula was in labor with Rachel. I walked in the house and they frantically went running out the door. I don't know how he did it, but there on the counter was a bottle of Pepsi and a bag of Ruffles chips. Years passed and Zach, Noah, and Rachel grew up. I ended up having babies of my own, and the time between seeing Jean and passing got longer and longer. But I could always count on a hug when we did cross paths. Zach, Noah, Rachel, and Sarah. Having lost a parent myself, I want to leave you with this. He may not be here physically, but he will always be your dad, because love never dies. Jean, I will miss your humor and your drive-by hugs, and that bottle of Pepsi and that bag of loaded potato chips. Rest easy. Love, the paper girl.
And just a couple more that have come in. Thank you so much, all of you. This one is from Corey, Sheila, Jacob, and Nicholas. Wish we could be there in person, but sending all our love and strength as we watch the service by webcast. I've heard a saying, God made us cousins because he knew our mothers couldn't handle us as brothers. Which probably couldn't have been more true. From music to hockey and everything in between, we were so much alike. I remember on a trip home to visit our grandmother, Jean was flying on the red-eye to Gander to meet up with the rest of the family. His flight had a stopover in St. John's just as I was getting off work, so I met him at the airport around 2 or 3 in the morning. We came back to the house and chatted it up, listened to some tunes until the hunger set in. We looked at each other to figure out what to eat and almost at the same time blurted out, barbecue. Now it was about 5 or 6 in the morning when we had the grill out, going with all the fixings, waving to the neighbors as they went off to work. To say he will be missed is putting it mild. I'm glad that we got to spend time together over Christmas and share some more laughs. He will be forever in our hearts and thoughts. Love you, bro. And Bob and Vida Foster have sent this to Bern, Joan, Cindy and Darren, and Zachary, Noah, Rachel, Wendy, Sarah, and extended family and friends. Sorry we cannot be with you. Our hearts are very heavy today as we remember our beloved Jean. Although Jean's life was short, you may all feel his warmth today as you celebrate his life. Jean loved life and lived it to the fullest. He was kind, caring, loving, and a funny individual. We believe he is now pounding on those drums in the great angel band and watching over us all with that big smile. Gene was special to us, and he'll be truly missed but never forgotten. Go rest high on that mountain. Your work on earth is done. It's not goodbye, it's see you later. Bob and Vida. And from Gene's mom-in-law, Ada. I have found that in life there are losses that can never be replaced, and how love, even in death, never dies. My special memories of you will always bring a smile to my heart and be a comfort in my grief. You were so easy to love, Gene, and I will forever miss your loving, barrel-chested bear hugs. You will always be my beloved son-in-law, and I will love and miss you forever and always.
Don't be mad if I cry. It just hurts so bad sometimes. 'Cause every day it's sinking in, and I have to say goodbye all over again. You know, I bet it feels good to have the weight of this world off your shoulders. And now I'm dreaming of the day when I'm finally there with you. Save a place for me. Save a place for me. I'll be there soon. I'll be there soon. Save a place for me. Save some grace for me. I'll be there soon. I'll be there soon. La da la da la I have asked the questions why, but I guess the answer's for another time. So instead I'll pray with every tear, and be thankful for the time I had you here. So you just save a place for me. Save a place for me. I'll be there soon. I'll be there soon. Save a place for me. Save some grace for me. I'll be there soon. I'll be there. I wanna live my life just like you did, and make the most of my time just like you did. And I wanna make my home up in the sky just like you did. Oh, but until I get there, just save a place for me. Save a place for me. 'Cause I will be there soon. Save a place for me. Save a place for me. I'll be there soon. I'll be there soon. Sometimes in this life there's sorrow and there's pain, and when we lose someone, it'll never be the same. But I know that there are signs sent down from up above to let us love ones know they're sending down their love. If butterflies could talk, and if pennies they could see, if finding a dime brings your memory to me, then I won't be afraid, for I know that you're okay. If butterflies could talk, I know what they would say. Now when my time it comes to cross that golden shore, my loved ones I will meet and be with them forevermore. Let not your heart be sad, think of me every day, and when you see that sign, you'll know that I'm okay. So if butterflies could talk, and if pennies they could see, if finding a dime brings your memory to me, then I won't be afraid, for I know that you're okay. If butterflies could talk, I know what they would say. Yes, if butterflies could talk, they'd say that you're okay.
There's my school.
Spend all your time waiting for that second chance, for a break that would make it okay. There's always some reason to feel not good enough, and it's hard at the end of the day. I need some distraction. Oh, beautiful release. Memories seep through my veins. Let me be empty. Oh, weightless, and maybe I'll find some peace tonight. In the arms of the angel, fly away from here, from this dark, cold hotel room, and the endlessness that you fear. You are prone from so tied up in a straight line, and everywhere you turn, there's vultures and thieves at your back. The storm keeps on twisting. You keep on building the lies that you make up for all that you lack. It don't make no difference. Escape one last time. It's easier to believe in this sweet madness, all this glorious sadness that brings me to my knees. In the arms of the angel, fly away from here, from this dark, cold hotel room, and the endlessness that you fear. You are pulled from the wreckage of your silent reverie. In the arms of the angel, may you find some comfort here. You're in the arms of the angel. May you find some comfort here.
A lot of laughing going on during that and a lot of sniffling, and both are such healing emotions to express. So I'm glad that you have the freedom to do that here today. You know, I had some remarks prepared, and as I was listening to everyone, and there's nothing that I could say that would be any more beautiful and articulate and meaningful than I have heard from you as family members and friends today, and I thank each of you for that. I want to just call up, in a moment here, I want to call up Carolyn for one last tribute before we go our separate ways. Carolyn?
Pretty tough to hold it together after that. Jean was my cousin, and like Jean and Cindy, my sister and brother, Patricia and Robert, and we all grew up in Labrador City together. So we wear that as kind of a badge of honor. So I just wanted to share a few memories of Jean that I think really speak to the kind of person he was that you've heard over and over here today, that he was just the life of the party, and it was his sense of humor that just came through anytime you ever met him. So one of the most wonderful memories I have of him was that 2004 Parsons family reunion in Lumsden, Newfoundland. So Jean and Uncle Bern and Uncle Claude, they all organized a screech-in for when we were all there together. And for those of you who don't know what this is, it's a ceremony performed on non-Newfoundlanders to make them honorary Newfoundlanders. And it involves taking a shot of screech, which is a Newfoundland rum, saying a few short recitations, and finally you have to kiss the cod. So my husband Patrick and I, we rode our motorcycle all the way across the country from Vancouver to Lumsden, just so Patrick could be properly screeched in Newfoundland. And my brother Robert and his wife Lisa, they drove all the way up from North Carolina so that Lisa could be part of the fun and get screeched in as well. So for his part, Gene just fully channeled his inner Newfie for the whole ceremony. He had all of the candidates don the full oil slicker set, top and bottom, complete with the sou'wester rain hat. One of those last slides that you saw there was of my husband Patrick trying to get into that gear to be screeched in. Gene had us all in stitches with his incredible sense of humor that night. He was just such a character in how he led the festivities and just made all these non-Newfies feel so welcome and truly a part of the family. So during the screech-in, some of those memorable lines that had to be recited to make things official included, here we go, "Order teats and pass the gums, look out stomach, here she comes." Then you take your shot. Another classic, "Yes, by, all you dartin' when dartin' with." Now, if you're not sure what I just said, just ask your nearest Newfie. So another favorite memory of Gene comes from Cindy and Darren's wedding a few years ago. My mom, Ruby, and myself and Patrick, and my sister Patricia and her husband Igor attended that wedding, of course, in Puerto Vallarta. As always, Gene was the gregarious life of the party there as well. On the day of the wedding, there was a gorgeous sunset dinner, followed by music and dancing, of course. So leave it to Gene to be the life of the party and make sure that the entire evening was just full of fun and everybody was having a great time. At one point, Patricia's husband, Igor, started playing the spoons on the table, and Gene saw this and went over and, of course, had to join in with all of this with playing of the spoons, and then the next thing we know, it just escalated, and all of a sudden, Gene and Igor were playing the spoons on each other's backsides. I'm sure I'm leaving you with quite a visual there, but those two could really ham it up. Circling back to those recitations from the screech-in earlier, there was one more line. "Gene, long may your big jib draw. Love you."
Thank you, Carolyn. So the Parsons family would love if you would stay for some refreshments with them. Gene's ashes will be buried at the family plot in Lumsden at a future date. And if you desire to make a memorial donation in Gene's memory, the family would appreciate if you would do that for the Canadian Cancer Society. But please stay and share more stories and laughs and tears, and there's lots more tissue. So, throughout his life, Gene showed you how to leave the world a better place by sharing with you his generosity, his enthusiasm, his sense of humor, his kindness, and most of all, his love. I want to ask that any time you happen to notice someone else doing something like Gene would have done, take a moment to thank you for reminding you of him. And each time that you do something like Gene would have done, those qualities live on in you, his children, you, his family, and those of you whose lives he touched. So each time you do something like Gene would have done, do that in his memory. Because he lives on in each of you by his example, we can all leave the world a brighter place.